Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. My guest today has nearly 37 years in and around the real estate industry. He is a top producing agent. He has held numerous leadership positions within the brokerages he has worked for. He currently is the branch development manager with Coldwell Banker office here in Avondale. He brings a couple of decades of corporate America experience. Let's welcome Ed Akers of Coldwell Banker Vanguard to the show.
Good morning.
Ed, thank you for coming down.
Thanks for the invite.
I appreciate you reaching out because I one of the things I do before the show is find out as much as I can, at least from social media. One of my anchors is always LinkedIn, and you have a great LinkedIn page. Tells a lot about you. It was easy for me to go in there and piece together because I like to go through it and see how people's career, life happens. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I always kick off the show with the easiest question. Where are you from?
I'm a native of Jacksonville. Jacksonville. Born and raised. I was actually born on 8th Street in the old St. Luke's Hospital in the Springfield area. So
Okay.
I have a little tie to that community, which I worked quite a bit in and volunteered in over the years. I lived there again for a while. But my family moved to Clay County back in the 72 and built a house out in that area. And so I lived in Clay County, grew up on a couple acres of land. Mowed grass every Saturday,
Yeah.
But then moved back into Jacksonville probably around my late 20s.
So did you go to high school?
In Middleburg, actually.
In Middleburg, okay.
First graduating class in Middleburg, all 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Just had our 40-year reunion. That
Awesome.
Kind of date me a little bit.
The first class, though, right?
That's graduating class, yes.
I love that area. I officiate high school football here in Northeast Florida, and to get a Middleburg game or Clay High School, I like going out there. It's easy for me because I live in St. Johns County, just cross over the bridge. But I think, talk about it to relate it to real estate. I mean, you know that area, and I think as that bridge gets built and is finished here in the next, I think it's 2030. The new Shands Bridge, that area is just going to be a huge growth area. Not that it's not growing right now, but it's going to go on steroids.
Yeah, actually, so growing up in Lake Asbury, we were like the 25th house built in Lake Asbury, so there was nothing out there. Most of the land was built on what used to be 26,000 acres of farmland that was on the Lee family. So first graduating class in Middleburg, I remember when there was no lights except for a flashing light at 21 and 218. And so it's absolutely amazing how much growth has happened down there. I cut my teeth in real estate in that market. So I started my real estate for a small real estate company there. The sister owned the real estate office, the brother owned the appraisal office there. And so then back then it was you were selling $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 vacant lots. Someone might buy one, put a well and septic on it, and you might sell it for 15 or 20. They'd hold a mortgage on it. Mobile homes, manufactured homes were 25,000, 35, 45,000. If somebody paid 55,000, that was a lot back there for a manufactured home. And now $200,000, $300,000 plus. Unbelievable, right? So at new construction was I've sold. We had a gentleman walk into the office one day and said, "I've got 10 acres. I'd like to, sell the 10-acre lots and build homes on." I said, "Sure, be glad to, right?" One of the great things of holding floor duty, right? The opportunity. If you're not holding floor duty, you miss the opportunity, right? So, contractor walks in, and we wound up selling the lots for him on the end of Mustang Road. So, but the new construction, it was 65,000 to 72,000 new construction, and interest rates were in the teens.
Yeah.
So I've lived that teen scenario. So when I hear 7% is too high, 6% is too high. My first one was 9 and 3.
Well, I always bring you back down to earth. You said 65 or 70,000 versus 650 or 700,000.
So
right.
That would have been in 1987, 88 period of time. Yeah. So
I'm just going to take a moment before I forget because I always get deep into the show. My co-sponsor here, Remy Graphics. I'm going to show it in the graphic. Everyone has seen it. Remy Graphics, and of course the logo is on here. I've got a nice mug in here for you.
Thank you.
For the logo for coming on the show today. But Remy Graphics, Dunya will make these one-offs if you want, and they make other laser engraved items. Go to remygraphics.com that I have there on the thing. But they'll make one-offs. So if you're doing a closing or something and you just want to make a specialized, hey, John and Sally, welcome to Jacksonville, whatever, she will make one-offs for you. So for closing. Definitely get a hold of Remy Graphics. Go on their site. They have obviously other laser engraved items. So, and if you mention the Real Estate Excellence Podcast, you get a 10% discount. So make sure you do that. So going back deep though, I am always interested, of course, how people get into real estate. And you did it at a very young age, which was rare at that time. I imagine you were in offices where most of the people were 20, 30 years older than you.
Some interesting experiences. So when I went to junior college, and after I finished junior college, I just looked at my mom and said, I don't know why, but I want to go take my real estate license. And to this day, I don't remember why I did it, but I'm glad that I did. So that was in 1986. I started in 1987. I was the youngest member of what was then the Clay County Board of Realtors, which is now, it's all been absorbed into the Northeast Florida Board. But so that was a big deal back then. I've had customers say, have you ever bought a house before? I'm 20, 21 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I actually haven't. I'm still living with parents, you know. They said, well, why should we buy a house from you? I said, well, because I've been through real estate school and I'm educated and I know the market. I've lived here my entire life.
Right.
And usually that was enough to get me over the hurdle. Right.
Right.
But part of that was communication and digging in and finding what they want, listening to the customer. Right. And it was very successful at that. So
yeah.
I think that's kind of been my motto all along. As I get in the weeds when it comes to that kind of stuff. I really look for the details of the thing. I really listen to my customers, what they're looking for.
Where do you think you at, like you said, 20, 21, 22 years old, is that something you could just kind of just naturally through just maybe some trial and error, or were you actually, being mentored, or are you following somebody? Where did you pick up some of these? Because obviously those are, key things when we talk to the top real estate agents, communication and the whole sales process. And it's not necessarily being salesy, if we want to use that term, but listening. Right, we would say a lot of our young people today don't just listen or even retain what we're telling them half the time. I think we could probably go back in generations and say that about every teenager there.
Right.
What do you think? What were you doing at the time that clicked, or is that just the way you were brought up?
I think it's a lot of the way I was brought up, and unfortunately, I didn't get the mentoring. So I went. It was a very small, privately owned company. Had been in the family for a number of years. The broker, unfortunately, wasn't extremely engaged. And so it was like I had gone to the other companies around the area, the other franchise companies, and basically, are you going to work full time? I'm like, yes, I think so. I'm going to give this a try. And I actually had put going to college, the rest of college, on hold. And so I'm just going to give this a try, which my family thought I was nuts. But anyway, I did that. And the first year I was pretty successful selling $8,000 and $10,000 lots of mobile homes because I was really digging in.
Right.
I was riding the roads, working for sell-by owners, doing those types of things. But I really didn't get that very professional mentoring, that we had. My brokerage is wonderful for that right now. I wish that I had that back then. In fact, I knew my broker back then.
Well, and of course, you didn't have the technology.
Correct.
Right. You might be a few years older, just a couple years older than I am. Obviously, we didn't have emails. Computers were just at their infancy. They weren't teaching you how to use software. They were actually teaching you how to write, code, I guess is what they would call it today. Right. When you're in high school, in the late 80s. So you didn't have pictures and videos of these homes. You had basically, whenever someone put that description, or maybe took a Polaroid, really, and put them in the.
And we didn't have an MLS. Other than the fact it was in books, right? So every couple of weeks we got a printed book of what the listings were. And if you're going through it, by the time you may want to make an offer on it for a customer, that property may have been sold. So we're dealing with a little bit of out of date. It is definitely technology wasn't quite there yet. I had actually wanted to. I call it farming back then, right? So I said, there's got to be an easier way to do this. I was going down to the appraisal office, and they had these big, huge black tax books, right? And I was literally with a legal pad and a pen writing down names, addresses, phone number, names and addresses, lot, block, subdivision number on those subdivisions that were down there, because I just wanted to get more lots to sell, right? It was pretty easy to do, right? And if I had a big inventory of that, then I had customer choices, right? And then I met someone then who had his license with our brokerage, but wasn't actively selling, but was in the technology. And so together, I said, there's got to be a way. If there's a way we can computerize this, can we do that? And about 3 weeks later, he comes into our office and brings his, big laser printer and brings a big computer in and sets it on the desk and says, "Watch this," and creates a demo of establishing being able to download the data from the tax rolls and merging it to a word processing document to do mail merge. I'm like, this is like the best thing ever, right? This is going to take hours.
All right, you're definitely into the 90s now.
This was actually around 1988, actually. So I'd only been in real estate about a year, and then this started to happen,
right?
Because I wanted to up my game.
Was the county was online at that time?
It was online. You're able to actually get that information.
Okay.
So we had this program, Tax Link is what we called it. We were just linking stuff together, and so we convinced the broker to invest in a laser printer. And a computer, back then it was like a 286 megahertz, whatever, 286, 12 megahertz, right?
Yeah, our phones have more.
Yeah, we didn't get the green screen, we got the AMRA screen, so we were kind of updated a little bit. But the first month, we actually printed out 26,000 form letters. I was working day and night to send this stuff out. My broker said, here you go, just have at it, right? And I was so busy. But this is
because you're stuffing these envelopes yourself.
I'm stuffing envelopes, everything else, and taking boxes and boxes to the post office, and they're wondering this poor little Middleburg post office, like, what are we doing, right? So, but we got so busy, and I mean, 8,000 to 10,000 lots. The interesting thing was our brokerage back then was the original brokerage that handled this real estate sales transactions for all those lots to start with from the original developer. So we had 11 file cabinets full of all the original closing files that they had kept. So I had original surveys, original closing documents. So it was a little bit like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of work.
How did you, so those were you were sending the letters out to the owners of the lots?
The owners wanting to know, hey, if you're wanting to list your property, hey, we've got to do it. We've got the original file here for you. This would be really great. And so we would send them a rough estimate, approximately what the value of the lot might be.
Mm-hmm.
And I go they called and said, yes, I'd like to sell. I go take a look at it. I'm like, well, we think it's going to be $9,000. And so we would wind up selling it. Commission structure was much different back then, and everything else, it was a little different than it was now.
Well, it's an interesting time because I remember I was in college 88 to 92. I remember coming down for spring break because my parents had friends that lived in Palm Coast, and going down there and visiting them during that time. And yeah, you could buy $10,000 lots on golf courses.
Oh yeah.
Type thing. But actually to be out in the Clay County area, was just people bought those lots, or they were just the developers still own those lots, or because obviously you were selling it for $9,000. Did they pay like $4 or $5 for them originally? Type thing.
In many cases they did. In many cases they paid 7 or 8. It just depends upon how good the lot was.
Right.
And so I actually learned to kind of look at these lots and say what kind of growth is on them, right? And you could tell sandy or not, the types of trees that are there, and you could tell when you got a good lot that had oak trees on it versus one that had palmettos and pines and maples and other types of plants and stuff. So, but yeah, so that was hugely successful for us.
How did you match to the sellers though? So you're getting listings.
Right.
How are you bringing that to the consumer?
So many times we had a lot of buyers that would come in and say, I'm looking for, a lot. And I'm like, well, what's your budget? And they said, well, I'm going to pay, 9 to 10 or 9 to 11. I'm like, well, I got like 5 lots for you here. Let's go take a look at them.
Right.
And so we were able to handle both sides of the transaction or whatever else sometimes. So that worked out good. Or other brokerages would call us and say, got somebody looking for a house or a vacant lot on Hibiscus Street or Cosmos or John Cemetery Road,
Right.
And so we had, let me pull in the file and see what I got. Well, I've got 3 lots there,
Right. Right. So I just think to relate to obviously the, marketing that we do today, and you're a leader in your office now, and what you're doing now as far as the importance, especially now as listings are staying longer on market. We're trying to promote those listings. We didn't have to really do that too much 2 years ago. Now it's vital. Are you doing a broker's open? Are you putting that out there? Where that time period that you had, I mean, there was no Facebook, there was no videos on the internet per se. I guess, websites were primitive at best.
Yes,
that was probably your fastest way to post up that you have a lot. But obviously you got to drive people to your website too.
Right. It was usually a sign for the most part, or walk-in. So floor duty was really important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being present and accounted for. We many of those lots never saw the Times Union magazine because everybody used to use the old Times Union ads, right?
Right.
Unless it was a house. Usually the homes would be there, but sometimes we put collection of lots, right? We have various lots available, so there might be something there. That was about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't much out there in terms of advertising. So it was a lot of legwork. It was a lot of self promotion. It was a lot of things like that. Occasionally, if I find someone who would buy 3 or 4 lots, and they would buy them and put well and septic tank on them, and they would rent the lots out. Somebody could move their manufactured home on. They'd rent them out for money, or they'd hold financing.
Speculate.
Financing on them. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
So it was pretty interesting. But that was really for me. That's kind of the start of the technology aspect of my career. Because ultimately I went in to work for a privately held company.
Yeah.
To do much greater things. So.
I'm going to go to that after. Just your general, being in the industry as long as you have, the importance of walk-in traffic then was vitally important. Obviously, every real estate agent does business differently. Every brokerage does real estate differently. What is your mindset today on having more of a retail front versus, obviously we know some of them don't have any office,
right?
Do you see that market still there for walk-ins? You think in certain areas?
Absolutely. My office is in Avondale Historic District, which is a huge walking area for the shops of Avondale, right? So, and I'm always promoting that to come in on a Saturday or Sunday, be there, come in during the week. It all gets down to being present and accounted for, right? In this business, we have 12,000 roughly agents in our market. Those who stand out, those who have both feet in, right, in the business. So we have a lot of people that are part-time and stuff, and some that works great for them. But I'm a corporate person. I show up for work. I'm there and present, accounted for, not just to do the work, but my management knows that I'm there, present, and accounted for, right? That sends a good message to them. But I've always been a 2 feet in or 2 feet out. Tiger by the tail, grab a hold of it, hang on, and give it my all, right? And so those agents, as we're going through transitions in our industry now, I think those agents that are very involved in that are staying educated, that have both feet in, right, are going to be the ones that are going to be the most successful, right?
Yeah.
And I think, and that hasn't changed. I mean, that's the case back then. I mean, I was riding the streets of the neighborhoods trying to find for sale by owners. It's really whatever works for you, right? I mean, I think that's a lot of it. It's kind of like the CRM. What's the best CRM that's willing to use, right?
Exactly.
What is your plan? What's your business plan? What do you want to accomplish, right? If you want to have, $5 million in sales every year, then you need to figure out, how do I get there, right? And how many calls a day you're making, how many note cards you're sending a day. Is it a little bit of a numbers game, right?
Right.
But part of it is the more you put yourself out there, the more likely you're getting something back, right? So, being part of relocation, networking is a huge thing. I'm fortunate because I've essentially done networking my entire life without realizing I'm doing network, without purposely doing networking. But part of that is just establishing relationships in all walks of life, right? I'm fortunate that when I left the corporate world in 2016, I had a big network of people. Right?
Yeah.
So, and people knew me, liked me, trusted me, right? And now they trust me as their realtor.
Right.
So, so I was pretty successful starting off in 2016. Not everybody has the benefit of having a large network of people.
Right.
Someone who moves from another state to Jacksonville, gets their license, doesn't really know anybody. You're going to probably have to work a little extra. Part of it's getting out there networking. Business cards, as antiquated as they are, is some of your cheapest form of advertisement besides social media now.
Right.
And so that's just you putting yourself out there, which is kind of what I'm here today. I mean, I think right now is everybody needs to break out of their comfort zone, right? And you need to experience and step out of that a little bit and see what works for you. So,
well, there's obviously video. That's what I keep telling you guys at every conference. I say this every show. You've got to get on. If someone listening today, you want some ideas, I can give you some ideas. I have many agents talking to me. They're afraid of this video camera, but you probably dropped it. We are even videoing this 30 seconds in because we're just having a great conversation.
Right,
yeah.
I forget that the mic is here. I'm on the camera, right?
Yeah, you just start talking.
Conversation, right? So,
yeah. And there's many ways to do it. I see agents on Instagram. Actually, there's this great business, Kim Perrell. I I follow her from a business standpoint as a businesswoman. She sits there and she's got the same mic I have, and she's just talking into the camera, doing her little LinkedIn video, giving some advice or something, and makes it look like she's on a podcast. There's some agents that are on Instagram, they're making it look like they're on a podcast, but I'm looking at them going, you'd be on a lot of podcasts, because they change the lighting and everything, but that's comfortable for them to talk as if they're talking to somebody in a camera over here, but you're creating video, but you're creating those relationships, and that's where I wanted to go to next. When you're working with some of the newer agents today, or over your entire career, I mean, obviously you've worked with agents at all sorts of levels. I think one of the misconceptions that the public has of a real estate agent, or even real estate agents that are just getting started, is I think real estate mortgage people do too. We live our business. Right. We are always marketing. We don't say it's not 9 to 5 for us. Mm-hmm. If the agent calls at 8 o'clock, I'm taking the call, because there's a reason why they're calling. Hey, I need a quick pre-call. I got to make an offer. Right. Especially 2 years ago when everything was like bang, 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 type of thing. But as an agent, you're networking all the time, whether you're out to dinner or just socializing with friends, because they're all going to ask you, hey, what's going on in real estate? Because that's just an easy question, and they know that's your wheelhouse, but you're networking, you're building that trust and credibility.
Right, absolutely. I'm a normal human being, right? And so but real estate can be 24/7. Mm-hmm. It can definitely take over. I mean, I had a property back in the heyday when things are really starting to crank here a couple of years ago. I had a property that had 34 offers on it. That was about 4 or 5 days of my life I will not get back. Right? But, it was a huge thing, and because you've got to spreadsheet it, you've got to work all the numbers out for your customer. What's important to the customers, what's the net among many other things, right? Mm-hmm. So it is totally not a 9 to 5. I have trouble getting out of my house in the mornings because of phone, email, text, other types of things happening, right? Right. Not alone from thinking what my day is going to be like, right? And part of that is try to set goals for what you're trying to accomplish. I'm a whiteboard person, and people laugh at that sometimes, but part of that is projecting out what you're planning on doing, right? Same thing goes for real estate listings and pendings and everything else. I know 3 months out what I'm planning on closing on, or what's going into pending, right? And so it's all about forecasting, right? If you don't have that visually in front of you, you don't have anything really to accomplish, right? And so you can do that visually on a whiteboard. You can do that in a planner, whatever else. But I think that's important for a lot of the new agents too. So,
do you feel agents can almost? Well, I think a lot of agents don't look long term. They get in the business. They're not, and not realizing that they're actually their own small business. They are, they're all 1099, and then, from a career standpoint, they aren't doing some of the steps that, or going to someone like you who's been doing it and has had a lot of failures, I'm sure, through the years, tried different things, and actually sitting down and discussing to actually plan out, hey, what do I need to be doing so I'm really getting leads 5 years from now? Mm-hmm. I am just getting people calling me at 8 o'clock in the morning, and now I need a team, and we'll talk about support and so forth. But they really only have a 30, 60, 90 day vision a lot of times, and not looking at some of the long-term, loosely used the term marketing plans, or, like you said, you mentioned CRM, the one you use, because I know 99%, I'm going to say 99% don't leverage the CRM, because you have to take some time to learn these things and what it can do and how you want to use it. Because there's so many, these CRMs are they're like a computer. I mean, they can do so many thousands of things, and we only use a small percentage of it.
And I'm a little old school on that too. So I'm a little bit, a lot of my CRMs up here still. So, but part of that is, you're absolutely right. So it's not just a 30, 60 day net, but if you want to say, like, I want to accomplish $3 million in sales this year, $3.5 million in sales this year, right? Well, figure out what the average price is in the Jacksonville market, which has significantly increased, probably about $150,000 since 2018, right? So that price is up. So do the math, right? Figure out how many sales is that? How many transactions is that? Then you have to figure out, is it one a month? Is it whatever else, right? So you should have some forecast out there. Start planning for that. Well, to get the one sale a month, you've got to make so many contacts, so many calls. So 5 note cards a day, get up in the morning and send those note cards out to customers. And it doesn't have to even be send them to your friends, send them to colleagues, send them whoever. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm in real estate, right?
Right.
This is what you want to do is establish personal connections with people, right? And it could be over, it could be over dinner, it could be over just a walk in the park, it could be whatever you want it to be, right? It doesn't always have to be in real estate. They just have to know that you are in real estate.
And you're alive and breathing.
I'm alive and well.
Yeah, exactly.
You need me, right? So you don't have to force it, right? And so it's even going out to dinner, and you get great service. As I'll pop a little business card down there, write a little note on it, said had a really great dinner, And I didn't say if you need me, call me, right? But she has my business card, or they have a business card. So it's little things like that, I mean, I keep a stack of business cards. That's the cheapest form, right? So, farm a neighborhood. I don't farm necessarily, but I do sometimes based upon new activity that I get. But I'm looking for opportunities. So here a few years ago, when the real estate, it was so many agents in the area, it's kind of a little difficult to get a new home listing, right? I said, well, I used to sell land, 30 something years ago. I'll just go. Where can I go sell land? So I went to a community up on the north side and managed to get a new listing up there. And I say, well, okay, I've heard the neighborhood. This seems like a good opportunity. Did some research. So I just sent the neighborhood out, and I wound up selling about 20 lots in the neighborhood.
Wow.
So I've even had real estate appraisers call me and say, hey, I've got a lot for appraising. What do you think? I'm thinking, well, you're the real estate appraiser, but you sold 20 lots in the neighborhood. You have your finger on the pulse of what's happening, right?
Right.
And unfortunately, I saw where things started to happen, where maybe other agents caught on to what I was doing, and that's fine. It's good to be the trendsetter. Unfortunately, I started to see prices
because you had the lot, and you just reached out to other owners who had lots that were sitting there and say, "Hey, I'm selling this one."
I'd like to provide any potential future customer who's looking to buy choices, right? So if you're thinking of selling a lot, we'd love to be able to market the lot for you, right? So that is giving me 2 or 3 or 4 lots at a time to market. So if someone didn't like this one, I could take them over, show them the other one.
Right.
You have to kind of think smart about this stuff. Is find your little niche, what you're comfortable in. Some people like selling condos. Some people like selling beach property. I've been fortunate to sell land, manufactured homes, new construction, resales, historic homes. I've restored some of my own. So, so it's just kind of finding what your niche, what makes you feel comfortable, and go with it, right? But it's all about goal setting, and and you've got to put something out there to accomplish, right? And it doesn't have to be a major, significant goal. It just has to be a goal.
What I like about it, well, because you've mentioned it kind of a couple times in describing some of the marketing things, reaching out to, the neighborhood because you're selling that lot. And, what does that really take? And of course, a lot of our homes now that are selling, are in these subdivisions. It's not difficult to get addresses, to take a few moments, especially when you got a new listing, or maybe you just sold the house and say, hey, to go 20, 30 doors either way and say, hey, I just sold, Sally's house over here. We got a, great price on it, had multiple offers, whatever you want to put. If you're thinking of, I think people, because there are 12,000 agents. I think a lot of agents just think, well, yeah, everyone does know an agent, but doesn't mean that agent that they know has the like, trust, and credibility part of it, and are actually active. That we know a lot of agents, but are you actually doing stuff? And when you actually say, hey, I just sold this, which they probably drove by the for sale sign, and now you're reaching out, you have some credibility that, hey, you have a house and you just sold one here in the neighborhood. Right. Take that little inch and run with it.
Exactly. Absolutely. So, yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, the brokerage I have has their own marketing division, right? So it's easy for me to tell them what I want. I post cards, I want form letters sent out. I've even done that on my own. So in addition to what they're doing, in this case of this particular neighborhood, I did mail merge, right? So I went back to what I was doing 30-something years ago. And
you're giving me an idea, so I just got to write this down. So I'm sorry.
I went ahead. No, that's great. Hey, so it's for me, it was creating a form letter and pulling together an Excel database. I did mail merge, and I did it old school. I was sending out about 250 letters. That produced great results for me, and you also have to find, I say creating your niche, but find your bread and butter, right? I mean, this real estate market, as we know, you can have 3 sales this month and none for the next 2 or 3 months, right? So what is your bread and butter? What keeps that commission rolling in for you, right? For me, I was selling a vacant lot, closing at least one a month. Well, you know, the commission wasn't more than enough to cover my personal expenses and everything else, right? So that became my bread and butter for a period of time when getting a residential listing was a little bit more challenging, right? Because there's so many of us vying for, a small number, right? So it's finding your niche in the market, finding what you feel comfortable in doing, right? It could be property management, it could be new sales, it could be whatever case may be, but also finding what kind of produce bread and butter for you, because you got to have kind of a stable situation that kind of helps delaying the level fill. So the other thing too is communication with your customers. I learned a long time ago that even if you may not be getting showings on a property, that contact your customer, right? Don't let the listings go stale, right? And don't let that relationship with your customer go stale either, right? I found out that a customer would rather you contacted them every week or week and a half, whatever you and the customer decide is a good communication schedule.
Right.
Even if you contacted them and says, I've had no listing, I've had no showings, no offers or anything like that, at least that customer knew that you're in contact with them and that you had your pulse on what's happening with their listing. Right?
Yeah, that's becoming very important right now as these listings are starting to sit.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah. So if you have a customer you haven't talked to in the last month, they're thinking nothing's happening, right? You could have had 10, 15 showings, right? What's happening with the 10 to 15 showings? What's the feedback, right? Well, is it overpriced? They don't like this. They don't like that. You need to have a conversation with the customer and find out what we need you to make adjustments, right? You don't want it to go stale. So,
do you think right now, like obviously there's some ideal homes that they immediately sell that weekend because they're just in the right neighborhood. They got 3-car garage or whatever it is, the pool, that's what they want. Open houses, broker opens, really you hopefully someone walks in, but really show that to your seller that you're working, because I think a theme that we're going to have for a little while, it's the thing I've been talking about, obviously with the NAR settlement and so forth. I really feel the intention or the collateral damage is the devaluing the real estate agent, that they, all the things that we do, you do under the waterline that they don't see.
Right.
Type of thing. And you're developing your agents in your office now. You're working. How important is it they get that new listing to create some event, show the seller that, hey, I'm in the business. I'm going to show everybody in town, or as many agents as possible, this home, let alone obviously possible buyers. But how important it is right now.
It's extremely important. So. One of the things, of course, you let your customer that you're always there to working for them. You're doing everything you can, right? A lot of times I'll have a house it depends on the circumstance. I might have it where it goes live on a Monday, see what kind of listings we have. But I've always, something about showings we've had, but I always have an open house plan following that. It may be that we wait until Thursday and we turn it active, and then we do an open house on Saturday. A lot of times the new listings will do Saturday and Sunday open houses. I'll say, look, Mr. or Miss Seller, go ahead and take your weekend off. Go ahead and trip, because my goal is to take charge of what's happening this weekend. Open houses are hit or miss. It could be a beautiful day outside and you have zero. It could be a rainy, stormy day and you have several people, right?
Right.
I just saw a recent post where someone was asking, the other realtors group was asking, how many showings did you have at your attendance did you have at your open house? And some people said I had zero. Well, what did you do to market that, right? What kind of stuff did you do to promote that, right? Did you knock on 10 doors? Did you do postcards out? Did you do social media, digital marketing? What did you do for that?
Right.
So some homes are going to sell themselves. It's just naturally, it's the right house. It's the right neighborhood. It's, it checks off all the boxes for a lot of people looking these days, right? And in homes, some are a little more difficult to sell. We have to dig in and find out how I can market that. Maybe you have to market the home in a historic website, right? Reach out, find out where customers are moving from, right? There's data out there that you can leverage. So social media, right? So reach out to other parts of the country to do social media posting,
Right.
like move to Jacksonville, right? But from an open house perspective too, we've been very fortunate. We had one this past weekend. It was a brand new listing. On Saturday, we had 9 groups come through. Sunday, we had 8, right? Some came with the realtors. Some did not come with the realtors. and some didn't have a realtor representation at all. So the people out there looking, but now we take that list, right, that we have, and we either make a communication with their agent, right, to say your customer came in, how can I help, right? The ones that didn't have that, we make contact with them as well too, and say, how can we help you? Was this the right house, or you're not the right house, or what are you looking for? But it's just working through that list. But I think just the marketing of the house, kind of getting it ready.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer the more move-in ready the house is, the easier it is to sell, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's what I'm hearing. That people really want turnkey houses right now. They don't want to.
So I don't have to come in and paint I don't want to paint the purple wall again. So part of this is your listing presentation with your customer about getting the home on the market is depersonalizing, neutralizing the home, as I call it, right? So you want to have this great palette, right, that a customer can come in and say, I can just kind of really just bring my furniture and my clothes, right?
Right.
So I think the more move-in ready it is, the better chance you have.
Tell us a little bit, because you've been working in a historic district for a while, so I imagine you've had some homes where people have been living in for a long time.
Yeah.
Having some of those frank conversations. If you were giving a class to a bunch of new agents, the importance of being honest would be one of them. Hopefully everyone's honest, but to actually be direct with them. The importance right now of, hey, it's not just a sign in the yard, because everyone wants turnkey. If we want top dollar, we might have to do some work on the house.
Well, it gets all about, insurability and the ability to be financed, right?
Right.
So, if you look at the 4-point home inspection, right? Electric, plumbing, heating, and air, and roof, right? Let's just start there. Is there anything about the home that may be a challenge for that? Does it have an old electrical panel in it, a Federal Pacific or Challenger panel? Well, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Is the roof 20 years old, and that may be a problem. Plumbing, have you done any replumbing in it? Is it got polybutylene pipe in it? We're not by any stretch of the imagination inspector, nor do we pretend to do that, but at least I need to have some knowledge, and we can to recognize certain things for them, right? And electrical, and heating and air as well too. So is the heating and air working fine, right? When's the last time was it changed? Water heaters have popped back up. Like, how old's a water heater, right? If you go walk into a home and you see it's an old rusty water heater and it's 25 years old and it's got some gray plastic pipe around it, maybe this might be a problem. Right?
Well, I heard also where it's at in the house too. Because some of the old houses, they're in the ceiling.
They're in the ceiling, right? And do they have drain pans? And I have other types of things around them. So there's a whole myriad of things like that. And again, not being a home inspector by any stretch of the imagination, is having some fundamental knowledge of that, right?
Common sense.
Common sense about it.
Yeah.
Common sense about it.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, like old homes, like the historic homes, those homes, if you really listen to them, they'll talk to you, right?
Yeah.
There's something about an old home. You get a sense for, is this going to be a problem or not? If you walk around and see there's a lot of rotten wood and things like that. I mean, I've had situations where even conventional loans, not even the VA loans, that
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Exactly. I haven't even the conventional loans. I've had a real estate appraiser flag the rotten wood on it. They flagged rotten wood on a detached garage that had no value, but they flagged WDO on that, right? So they want that replaced. So again, this all gets back to how move-in ready can you make the home, right? And if you do that, that builds value.
Yeah.
Right? If someone can come in and say, I don't have to do anything, I can just move in.
They're going to pay more.
They're going to pay more for it, right?
Yeah.
And so if it's not, they're thinking, oh gosh, I have to replace the carpet, I have to repaint the walls, I have to, replace the fog windows, I have to replace the water heater. That just is going to kill the value. And if you're starting up here, where it should be move-in ready, they're going to knock you down a little bit on it. So.
Right. So working with the older homes, do you often call for a pre-listing inspection when you start to see a few of these issues? Say, hey, let's get someone professionally to find as many issues as we can right now to stamp them out.
Yeah, I think we've done that. So that's a really great idea to do. Let's find out what's out there, right? Because they may say, look, I don't see anything wrong with the house, right? But you have, when's the last time you crawled onto the house? Well, I haven't, right? Things happen, right? Things happen that we don't always visibly see, right? So rotten beams, rotten wood, it could have wood board damage on it, but when was that? So there's all those types of things. So I think it's just a pre-home inspection is a good thing to do on some of these older homes.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt even older ones too. I'm hearing horror stories about even the new construction
Yeah.
I've seen a recent one where there's no insulation in the house, and it was a year-old house, $1 million home, and there's no insulation in the attic. So I don't know how that passed inspection, but
I think, there's this,
having a home inspection prior to closing of the home would have been good.
yeah.
Even forget the fact you were going to do one in 11 months, which is when this was found, but having one that would have.
I've had Austin Gray on from Gray's Home Inspection, and I am a true believer in the pre-home inspection. If I was building a home, I'd have a home inspector from the beginning, because, like you said, the quality control is not there.
Right.
People kind of think that, the county inspector is coming by and signing off on this. Well, it's like any government; there's a low level threshold that these guys have to make, and is that the quality, or are you going to have to go and add insulation later? Did he actually go up there and poke it to make sure all the way around, or just where he could see was thick enough, but over there in the corner it's not insulated because they just didn't get it out there?
Yeah,
right?
and I don't think every city inspector is going to walk around and check every plug in the wall, right?
Right.
Home inspector does that with their devices to make sure they grounded plugs or not, or where the case may be.
Yeah.
In new construction, there's been plenty of times we've had that happen where GFCI breaker is not working for some reason. So, it's fun. I actually like older homes and stuff like that. I'm a huge mid-century fan, which is, I live in a 50s ranch. So it doesn't bother me that the bathroom is pink or green or purple or blue or whatever else, right? If it's in respectable, good shape, a really good cleaning of the tile does wonders. There's a certain amount of the population that like that. Homes just have good bones to them, right?
Right.
So I went from a 2-story historic home that I lived in to I'm in a 1-story concrete block mid-century house. Actually going back, because we had someone who had gone in already previous to me owning it and replaced cabinets and put granite and other types of things in there that doesn't really fit with the mid-century style. So
Right.
I'm going to the reverse with that. So my home's 1950s, 60s period furniture that we're second owner of, right?
Right.
And the light fixtures are period. I got rid of the ceiling fans. They're fantastic lights. So, so when I have a customer that's wanting to sell their home and say, well, do you think I should renovate this green bathroom? I'm like, do not touch it. Right? If it's in good shape, the tile's not cracked, let's just do a great clean on it and let me have fun marketing that. Right. So it's finding these things about the home we can promote and have fun with. Part of it is not only just having them provide that seller's property disclosure, but the feature sheet. These are all the wonderful things about this house, right?
Well, this is the research. What you're getting is research, knowing who the buyers are in that area. Obviously, in the historic district, you have buyers that might have the taste that you have and like it to be with the, versus if you're down in St. Johns County with homes that are less than 15 years old, 5 years old. They're more of they want the turnkey, they want the granite countertops, they want those things. So knowing your customer or who the buyer may be right now anyway in those markets is so important. I like to get out to the new agents that listen to the show. I know there's some experienced agents that also are picking up tips that you're getting. The consistency right now that I'm hearing from everyone is the buyers, for the most part, want turnkey. So you need to have these conversations with your sellers. What do we need to get it up to minimize? But also, if you're selling especially in the historic district, but really anywhere, when you get someone under contract, I know you guys, that's the first gasp of air you got, right? I got a contract. Okay. We might be closing in 30, 45 days. But then that inspection comes, and if there's issues, don't give the buyer that opportunity to use that as an excuse, or to have that buyer, everyone has that little buyer's remorse. Did I do the right thing? I signed that contract. Now you give them, there's this whatever. Now they have an excuse out. I don't know. I just believe in stamping all those things out. I guess it's kind of in the loan world. I like to make sure the loan's as clean as possible. So when I do get the contract, I just hand it over to the processor and underwriter, and it goes through. Call me when it's ready to close. That's
it's as simple as like having the roof. If you know the roof, it's time to be replaced, right? Don't wait to get into the contract negotiations, right? Or get into the contract and have the home inspection done on them to tell you what you already know, and now you've got to have a contractor come in and pull permits and do all the kind of stuff, which could be an impact to a closing timeline, which isn't so much now, but it was in the past, right? With getting permits approved, right? So if you know it needs to be done, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
So, a roof is a maintenance thing, right? There's other things about the home that are maintenance things. These things just need to be done, right? Renovating kitchens and bathrooms add value, and other stuff adds value too. So, another thing too about new agents. I said earlier it's having both feet in and both feet out, right? It's really hard to work a part-time job or some other job and then to sell real estate. Some people have mastered the art of that. They still have something on the side, and that's great because people who have different revenue streams do very well in life, right? There's some good statistics on that, right?
Right.
So if I was do this all the time, then I'm going to do X. But if I do this, and this, I can have different revenue streams. But it's just a matter of finding that balance in your life, right? So work-life balance. But I think it's more difficult for someone who doesn't have both feet in, And if you're not fully engaged in what's going on in the industry right now, you may be a liability to yourself and your brokerage, right? So, I think it's really important right now that you're up, you got your game on in terms of getting all the education you can possibly get right now with not only what's happening in, August 17th, of course, but with our forms changes, right? So we're having to move to the Florida Association, the Realtors forms, right? So our Florida Realtors Association forms. So you should be going through every one of those forms and learning all about those forms, right? You should be able to flip those forms upside down and have them in front of your customer and know what's on that form, right? And that's an extreme, but when you do that, that shows to your customer that you know what you're talking about.
Does the average, you use the term liability, does the average agent even really understand the liability? I know, and I put that out there because I know there's some people on my side of on the lending side. There's some things going on that are or the way I was, 19 years I've been doing this. Or you mentioned to one person and like, oh, that's arrest violation, but someone's doing it. Yeah. Now it may not be arrest violation because that person's not a lawyer and doesn't work for whatever that organization is. I can't. CFP. Yeah. Consumer Finance Protection Board. Because when you do read, you try to pull up any RESPA guidelines, it's got so much legal jargon. You're like, come on, dude, can you just simplify this? Give me an example of that. It's that type of thing. But I don't think the average agent really fully grasps the liability part, and you being in the business and now, and obviously in leadership positions, I imagine those are some of the discussions you have, because obviously protecting the brokerage is the primary.
Absolutely, and I worked in corporate risk, so I was a corporate risk director for a multi-billion-dollar company. So, and information security, technology, a lot of that. So, I'm a very forward thinker, and I'm trying to think outside of the box. What if I do this? What are the ramifications for that, right? What if I do this? Then I shouldn't have issues along the way, right? So to mitigate your exposure, right, of course, is being educated. I'm always a big believer that when you stop educating yourself is when you potentially become in trouble. Right? So I think thinking about it, new or old agents, is with all the industry changes going on, you've got to stay on top of what's going on in the industry right now. The forms changes. You need to be sitting and learning those forms. Spending that extra time that you have is going through all that, attending classes, and many people
go to more than one.
More than one,
yeah.
Right? Because what happened a month ago has potentially changed, right? So,
or your instructor is highlighting one part, not another, and another instructor is going to point something else out.
Agreements have changed, right? So that's the whole new thing, right? So, so it's just really important to do that, and because if you don't do that, if you say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, even with the new forms changes, right? We've gone from a NEFAR listing form to the Florida Realtor Association listing form, which that one's only 4 pages, right? This one's multiple pages. So what's not in the 4-page one that's in the one we're used to locally, right? Well, addendums, riders, other things. I've been going through that with our office. We started some classes just to do nothing but just go through each one of those forms. And it's been eye-opening. I'm going through the same thing everyone else is, right? Because a lot of those forms I didn't use. So I'm learning right there with the newer agents or other people that have maybe not been in the business as long as I have, but we're all in this together, right?
Right.
And if we're all in this together, we should all be doing and saying and operating the same way, essentially, right? It's going to make everyone's life a lot easier. Right?
What is, do you think, the biggest liability of any agent out there.
Well, of course,
Like
we're not
the big,
attorneys, right? So,
yeah,
we're not attorneys, and so just being able to, when you're writing documentation up, an offer up, if you need to have a special condition, then reach out to a real estate attorney for that, right?
Yeah.
So don't craft it yourself, right?
The language you're using in those areas where you have freehand.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be careful, right? So, and so you should be seeking some legal advice, get some assistance from, a closing agency or whatever else. Not be careful what you say, right? So, I've been at homes and I can see a brown spot on the ceiling, but I can't say the roof is leaking. All I can tell you is when you get your home inspection, Mr. Miss Customer, make sure that you get that checked out.
Yeah.
Right? That you want to make sure that everything's checking out for you, right? It could be nothing. It could have been something from a prior roof. It could be condensation.
Somebody was drinking coffee in the attic, and
it could be any number of things,
yeah.
right? So, but it's, and I think it's just being careful.
Yeah.
Because you have to be careful because even errors and omissions insurance, we all pay errors and omissions insurance. But if you're not doing things with regards to disclosures, if you see something, right, you need to make sure you tell your customer, perhaps an email and get it in writing or getting something to sign off on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't tell them that, right, and something happens in the future, right, and they say, well, I've got this problem with this house and,
my agent said
this and whatever else. And so your errors and omissions insurance may not cover you, right, fully, and that could cost thousands. So, so it's important to that. So just be cautious about what you're doing, right? And seek advice when you need to seek it. I learned a long time ago in real estate, if you don't know the answer to the question, tell the person, I don't know the answer to your question, but I'll do what I can to find that out for you, right? So just don't assume automatically you know that and just give them some explanation when you're not really sure about it.
The buyer's agreement, is that something you always did?
I typically had not. So I love listing homes, so that's always been kind of where I love to be at because I love the marketing.
Set the traps. That's why I call it set the traps.
Someone will sell it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm huge on listings. I've always loved that part of the business, right?
Yeah.
And in helping the customer prepare the home and getting that kind of stuff ready. So not so much on the buyer broker, the buyer side of the house, but again, I'm in the same boat everybody else is in. So everyone's got to make that shift. There is no choice, right? We all are going to have to do this.
So with your experience in the greater industry, obviously these are discussions you guys are having in your office. You're a leader. You've been, your credibility's there because you've produced, you've done. So obviously younger agents are looking up to you. How are you and how is your office? I'm going to use selling this because I know some people just gotten negative about it. Obviously, I'm sure you have found a positive spin on the whole buyer's agreement, but the importance right now that you need to be role playing. Right. What are questions that the seller or buyers are going to be asking, or if you're doing a listing agreement, the seller talking about the commission because it's out there, so they're seeing bits, they're seeing their little reels on Instagram and all this stuff. What is the I guess the attitude that you're trying to your office is trying to put across to everyone about this and how to absorb it and make it part of their business?
Yeah, well, again, I work in a corporate world where I've had multiple management changes. Companies have sold themselves off and merged and everything else. So what I found out was there's immediate response from that is like, oh my gosh, we're getting a new manager, right? Or oh my gosh, the company's being bought out. What I found is, and this is a cheese mover, right? So our cheese has gotten moved several times.
Right.
And some of those times mine's growing wheels, right? So when I was in the corporate world, I was there for about 18 years and had 11 managers, right? So what I found out was it's usually better on the back end of it, right? It's at first there's apprehension, but reality is that maybe it's not a bad thing, right? Change is good. In the risk world, the companies that don't change are doomed to fail, right? So if you're not going to change with the industry, right, you may not be there too long. So from starting to use the buyer broker agreements, of course, you need to know and study the documents, right? You need to know all their ins and outs about that as much as you can as an agent. On the backside of this, the positive is, when you're working with your buyers, you do have an opportunity to negotiate your commission, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and so we have listings that are out there, and for whatever the co-ops are, sometimes, we get one that's like, well, I've run into situations where I could show 10 homes, right? And the one the customer wants typically would have the lowest co-op. Wonderful. But my job is there to make the transaction work for the customer, right? Not focus on the commission. We should never be focused on that. In this opportunity of our broker agreement, you at least do have an opportunity to sit down with your buyer and consult with them to say, here's what my rate is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's why my rate is this, right? I'm worth that. And so for you, it's your opportunity to show your customer what your value is. And go down through the list of all the things you do. I mean, it's not just answering telephones and emails and stuff, but you do your homework, right? You're working with the customers and helping them to come up with some valuations and doing other types of things. You're there as their guide, right, to help them through this process. So you're there and you're bringing value to what it is they're trying to do. They have a goal in mind, right? You're there to help them accomplish that. How much is that goal worth? So this is an opportunity where you can have that conversation with them, set what your commission would be for them, regardless of what it may be on the other side. So I think it's just an opportunity for you to be able to sit down and do that. And there's plenty of other opportunities, right? So, some people like the listing side, some like the buyer's side of their house. For some people it doesn't really matter. But
would you or you may be already teaching this, I don't know, and just my whole thought is, some people are not, I'm one of them, are not very good at sitting down with you. And, when I want to express I'm valuable, you have to kind of, brag about yourself a little bit. Hey, this is all the things I'm going to do. And sometimes if you're just trying to rattle that off the top of your head, it doesn't come across smoothly, like some of my questions sometimes, because they are coming off the top of my head. But, go to that buyer's presentation, with a flyer listing all the things that you go, and the importance, or if you're at that listing appointment, the cost of all the things that you're going to do as a professional, the photos, this, that, all the things, the time. I keep saying on the show, I think every agent right now should have a journal, and every time a customer calls you, just like an attorney, and you talk to them, about whatever, you say, yep, Sally called at 9 a.m., talked to her for 15 minutes, strategizing on, or whatever it is. Because I don't think the public, and this is being brought to the light because of the settlement, realizes the amount of time the agent spends. And how many times at 8 o'clock have you been doing marriage counseling, for crying out loud?
I had a situation this past week, where, it was a customer that came through as a referral, in 2019, it's still been on the book, still maintained contact with them, went out there once before and met with them. And one of them was very disengaging, just could not care less that I was there. Right. So obvious, I knew this was going to be a potential listing opportunity with some tension involved. Right? And, I expressed back then, I'm not going to be your marriage counselor, right? I'm here to sell your home, right? We carry all of that with us. We carry some of their stress with us,
Yeah.
And to some extent, it's part of our job to take a little bit of that off of them, right? The buying process or the listing selling process. That's what we do, right? And then,
but you build relationships with these people, and sometimes they want to talk to you like you're their best friend.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes more than you really want to know.
Yeah.
But then so we did not list the house then, and we went back out this past week, and after three prior appointments that got canceled, right? Because the other one was not on board with it. Went back out there again, and got there, knocked on the door. Heard someone talking, heard him talking inside, and nobody came to the door, so I rang the doorbell, and forgot that I locked my truck, so I popped the lock, and of course the horn went off.
Right.
Knocked on the door again, and and rang the doorbell again. So it's 90 degrees. I'm dressed, nice, and I'm ready. I'd spent a good few hours preparing myself in terms of having market data, market stats, everything else, not to go in immediately expecting the listing that day, right? This was to go ahead and preview the home again since 2019 to see what have you done, and have this other conversation with them about industry changes and other types of things, right? So never would come to the door. So I'm like, how bad do you need me, right? I've got plenty of other customers in this case that do need the help. So unfortunately, you know, you have to kind of draw the line somewhere. It's like, I can't be your marriage counselor, right? And that immediately set a negative situation for me, that even if we do get this listed, there's going to be some point that this listing is going to be a challenge, right? Because we have someone who's totally not on board, right, with what's going on. And that could be problematic to the transaction later on. So, and I shared with you early on, was like, real estate's transactional, right? Right. So, but for me, my success comes from, I look at this as it's a very transition business. So we're here for whatever the case may be. Someone's job change, right? They got to sell their house. They got to buy one somewhere else for job change or relocation. Divorce situations, forced sales. Death, forced sales. We went through all that experienced that with some of the COVID experiences, right? I personally have been through some of that, where I was the realtor in the family, and parent passed away. So, you know, there's a lot of that happens. So we're kind of in a really transition business. We're helping people make transitions, right, in their life. So while it's transactional, we're there to serve some purpose in all this, right?
Right.
And for me, I've looked at the real estate business that way. It's very transitional. Yeah, we're there to help people make these changes in their life, of which involves a change in real estate somehow or other. And the fact that I do earn a commission on the back end of this is kind of my little reward. So for me, my why in the business, we all talk about what's our why in business, is I like to help, right? I like to be that person that's helping this person make this transition in their life, right? You know, sitting down with someone who's lived in a home for the last 60 years and now is making a change to move to assisted living or something, you know, it's all these things in their home, right? So how can I align that with them, helping people that dealing estate sales and other stuff, bring it in. So be a resource for your customers as well too. But for me, the most rewarding thing is helping that person transcend into transition.
The next chapter
of their life, right? So, that's a really big thing for me. And the fact that I somewhere got a commission check at the end of that was
right.
a reward, was my compensation for doing that. But I knew that this person was super happy at the end of it, right?
Right.
So I take it to heart, and I really do that. I've had some really wonderful experiences in life. I was fortunate to have a great family in childhood. I had a father who restored vintage cars. I got a really fun time to do that and spend time with him. I live my life with my father leaning over my left shoulder, my mother leaning over my right, making sure I don't take anything off of anybody that I don't need to, and making sure that I also do the right thing all the time. So
you've given me, listening to you, because of the situation I was talking about was how do you go into a situation of generally someone you don't necessarily know, or maybe they were referred, but you don't know these people, and you're trying to explain your value, and you were explaining your value to me. How important, just the advice, if any listeners were listening to that last 5 minutes that we've been talking, to put your value, I would suggest in a video, just like this, you and I talking, and you explaining, hey, I had to do this. I imagine you have had to put on boots and gloves and dig into some of these older homes and move some stuff out that you had to wear a mask for. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And these things that real estate agents do, and then how important the agent is there during these chapter changes in people's lives, which not always easy. Especially if you got a death in the family or divorce, it's a negative situation, and the agent is there being empathetic, and obviously they have their lives too, and let alone be involved in someone else's lives that they don't really probably have only known a month, right? If that. And I think it's so important right now for agents to get their stories out, like you were just expressing to me, the things that you go, because it's hard to put that in a bullet point thing. Right. But to sit down, and if anyone's listening, I would help you with that, to dig out like what is your value, and actually condense it into a hopefully, cut it down to maybe a little 3 to 5 minute video and put it on your website. Or when you do have that listing appointment, shoot that link out to them so they actually go, oh wow, this guy, he cares. He actually has shown he cared because he's telling me actual stories of him going, that this is the service that you provide not only to that individual but to the community as a whole.
Absolutely. And it's sharing, you have personal experiences, right? Just like they're going through a personal experience, right? So I had a father who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 85. I was a year out of high school.
Oh, geez.
And so, next 16 years of caregiving for him. So I used to do fundraising for the Alzheimer's Association as a result of all that. So, at a time in the 80s and 90s when there wasn't much out there. So we went through all levels of caregiving. So for about 16 years, as they passed away, we took care of my father, so I've learned a lot of compassion and patience, right, for things like that too. So it's all these little experiences.
You don't shy. You understand that when you walk into those situations today, where someone who may never have experienced it may just avoid that.
Right.
And I just, that's what adds huge value to you.
It's great what you said about the video, though. I mean, even if it's just a quick 3-minute video, it's just talking about it. I'm a human being, right? Just like I'm helping my customers. So I've had my personal experiences. I went through the COVID, 33 days in the hospital with COVID in 2021, the death of a parent at the same time.
Wow.
So and then wanting to sell their house for the family, and the last person who walked out of the house to see it empty. So I've been through a lot of that personally. I'm a much greater person, a much stronger person, a much compassionate person, understanding. I get that, right? Not everybody has all those experiences, right? So, but if I sit down with my customer and I have that, it's like, I understand, I'm fortunate to not have to been through a divorce situation. So, but I understand the situations that can happen, right? I've had homes that had 11 people I had to have sign to get ownership conveyed, right? And I went after it and did it. So, it's just really knowing your customer and listening to them and what their situation and their goal is. And you can share some personal things with them, right? That I get it. I understand what you're trying to accomplish, right? And then moving forward, what's plan A, what's plan B, what's step 1, step 2, 10. Let's find out to get you through this process so that you're successful. Right?
Yeah.
For me, it's never been about chasing the commission dollar. For me, it's about the transition aspect of it and what I'm there for, right? I'm going to be remembered a lot more for what I did to help this customer out than how much money I did. My parents used to say you're going to be judged probably in life not by the size house you have, the car you drive, or many other things, right? It's going to be who is at Akers, right? What did he do?
Who's in lives you've impacted?
Right. That's actually how many lives going to impact along the way. So and that's why that's my why.
Yeah.
And all this. So
well, because you have a passion about the business and obviously a passion about people, that is probably the cornerstone of it all. And then real estate is just the vehicle here.
Correct.
For agents coming in and understanding these natural passions that you have has led you to great success, because the time you've spent being empathetic and understanding their situations, letting them know that you're going to be there for them, it goes back to that initial question. And one of the initial questions that agents only look 60 or 90 days, that they really have to focus on the clients in front of them. And are they really giving them your all? Because it's that client that's hopefully, whether it's 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years, 10 years down the road, all of a sudden you get a call and say, hey, I know you dealt with my sister Sally 3 years ago. Can you help me in my transaction?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of my business is repeat customers or personal referrals, or former colleagues, people that I've known for years,
right?
Classmates, and stuff like that too, because they knew me. They knew me. They grew up with me. I've had some relationship with them for some period of time, right? So, and they knew me to be a very trusting, reliable, straightforward individual. But they know there's a compassionate side to who I am, right? So, and they get the sense that I care, right? And I think that's the biggest thing for me. That's been my success in this. So, if you're newer to the city and you get into selling real estate, of course, you've got to create networks of people, find opportunities to do that. No matter what that is, no matter what organization you belong to, is try to do that as much as you can and repeat.
It's not how much you know;
it's repeat. It's a step.
How much you care, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've had a referral come in, and people say, "Oh, the relocation fees you have to pay out in your commission." So, well, that's fine, right? That's a customer that I wouldn't normally have had, right?
Yeah.
It's a sale that I wouldn't normally have had, and that customer has not only referred me to, I've had about 4 or 5 transactions from one customer that came in. So somewhere along the way, it's panned out, right? And I believe in different things, the butterfly effect and certain things like that. There's something that happens, right? And whether it's the true butterfly effect, what I do to impact one person's life, they're going to remember that. And they're going to share that. I had a really great experience working with Ed, right?
Right.
And I think we all have friends and family members that are in the real estate business, right? And not to say that those are the best or the right ones to use, but sometimes selling real estate, because of the financial aspects, are very personal.
Yeah.
So some people, I've seen this a lot. Well, my sister's a realtor and she didn't pick me, or my sister wanted to sell her house and she didn't pick me because, I don't know why she picked someone else, right?
I totally understand it from the mortgage side.
Yeah, because I don't want you to know my financial stuff, right? It's not nothing personal, right? And so we have that. But so I think a lot of real estate agents need to understand that. I see that a lot. Is like, just because he didn't pick you doesn't mean anything negative. The fact is they just may not want you to know.
That's just their personal
situation. It is very personal. It's financial, right? It's a big transition, whether buying or selling. And I've had stuff like that too happen. I'm like, that's fine. That's okay. I'm okay with that.
100%. There's people, you could get your license today and they want to do a transaction for you, even though you've never sold a home. You have friends like that. And there's others that are going to wait and you got to sell 50 homes before they're like, okay, they're in it long enough. I can use them now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Same thing in the financial world, obviously pulling people's credit reports. There's some that just have that natural trust in you. There's others that will never use you because they just don't want you to know that, and you just got to roll on with that. Yeah. I want to just change that just because from a time standpoint, because I went back, I wrote, you probably have directly, indirectly coached, mentored many agents through the years, and obviously the position you're in now, that's more or less your title is the sales success part of it. You mentioned finding their niche earlier. You have changed you've molded your niche over the years to different things and went back to doing the lots, as you mentioned up north. Yeah. How do you come across it, especially to an agent you're trying to hopefully develop up that has potential, to help them find that? Because I don't think everyone I know some agents have moved brokerage. They say, well, I'm moving over here because I want to cover more of Northeast Florida. Is it necessarily the geographic area, or you just need to narrow down on your niche, which might be the historic district, for example? Right. How do you help them? How do you try to uncover with these agents that are developing?
Well, again, part of it is knowing your niche, but also that don't lock yourself into one thing as well too. So I think you got to find a balance there somewhere. Right? My niche was at the point in time, I figured, well, I used to sell land here. I can go sell land again. Well, if it's getting hard to sell or get a new listing on the home, I'll go try out the land aspect.
Something will move the needle, right?
I had to move the needle, right? Yeah. So I had to do something, right? So that's pivoting, right? So it's, you got to move your own cheese sometimes, right? Yeah. So I'm not going to do this because I'm seeing this is not going to go well. Let me try over here. So it could be driven from your network of people that you have. If you have, a couple of attorneys in your family or something like that, and maybe there's a niche where you can have some conversation with them. Maybe there's some business that you can draw from that, right? Learn about estate, learn about other types of things, right? I've had referrals from attorneys too that says I've got this house that's being sold and I've got, there was 10 family members, one of them passed away, so now there's a niece and nephew, and so now there's 11 people we have to get signed, right? Most people would just run away from that. I said, that's a learning opportunity, right?
It's 11 possible customers right there.
Possible customers. Well, maybe not so much in this case, but but the fact of the matter is that was a learning opportunity for me to dig in and say, okay, I've got to go get 11 people to sign all these contracts, right? And then when I get it under contract, I have to get have to
communicate with all of them,
right?
Yeah.
And then have to get under contract and have to, get all of them to sign the deed later on. So part of it was setting expectations up front with the customer. Here's what's going to happen, right? Here's what needs to happen during this so that all works smooth. But I think it's finding, if you, whether you're a member, belong, active in the church or active in other things, you have connections in different types of walks of life, is maybe that is where you draw it from. If you just absolutely love the beach and that's where you want to work and you want to stay in the beach area, then fine. For me, it's just been the ability to just find what it is I like, and I'm all over the board in most cases, right? I don't care if it's 5,000 or 5 million; it doesn't really matter to me.
Right.
So the process inherently is still the same, right? The communication is essentially the same, although you're dealing with different people sometimes too. So I learned sitting around a boardroom of people. You've got 12 people. You have 12 personalities, right? The real estate market is no different than that. Every new customer you have is a different personality. It's a different learning experience, a different way you may communicate. But inherently, the business is still the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
And preparing the home, doing the listing, setting up for open houses, doing all those types of things. So
what's an agent who may be listening right now? I think you'd agree with this. If you don't feel like you're in your groove, in that niche, that you're just killing it, which would be most agents, because we know there's a small percentage that are just got more business than they can handle. They've got a team or whatever helping them because they got so much business. To sit down, whether a coach or a mentor or a senior agent like yourself, and really just start having a conversation about where you're like I said, are you church goer? Where are these places where you can start to be where you have probably some credibility, where you could start to influence a little bit.
Right. Well, you could get back to what I said about my why, about I do this so I can help people, transition people. Maybe there's something you can do there that drives what it is, what your business is, So maybe it's connecting with attorneys or some other field. But I think it's just really important to find out where your niche is and find out how to
and you may have to have conversations with people to kind of uncover those things.
Exactly. Yeah. You can say what motivates you, what do you do, like what do you like to do, and like what's your hobbies. Sit down and talk to them and say, well, there may be something that you don't realize is a line of business that you would like to go in, right? And maybe it's not even sales, maybe it's property management, maybe it's something else. So I think that you just have to have that and sit down with a mentor and help draw that out sometimes too. And be willing to pivot, right? So be willing to change that up. If industry is going to change, the market changes, you need to find some way to adjust through all that, navigate that business. So I think the people that are most flexible, but still, it's all gets down to skill sets, right? So you can have certain skills, like in the case of the 11-person thing, right? That was a great opportunity for me to learn, right?
A lot of patience.
A lot of patience. A lot of patience. So I think if you take those opportunities and grab all those opportunities you can, right? Some of them are just bad opportunities to start with. I mean, some of them are just like, I don't know if I want to do that. So
right.
But
you have to find out you don't like it.
Right. And the good thing about real estate is you don't have to take everything that comes along.
Right.
Right. You can essentially choose, but I think that you just need to find those opportunities because it makes you a well-rounded realtor.
Right.
So
I want to finish with this part because I think this is a thing that every top agent runs into somewhere along the line. They reach a point where, and I use this phrase, John Maxwell phrase, reach the lid. I'm sure you've seen, you yourself have gone through it. When you feel, the number, somebody came up with a number, I forget who I was talking to not too long ago. They felt somewhere between 5 to 7 million. They're right now, in today's market numbers, they're getting back. You reached about 9, you're tapped. You don't have the time in the day for what you're doing, and it actually can start to erode your business because obviously you're not doing the marketing and prospecting. That part of it you start taking less of that because you're busy working on the transaction that you've already got. what do you feel are some of the things that, and I'm sure you've seen at your office, when you start seeing the agents reach this, what are some of the things that, should it be jumping into a transaction coordinator? Does Coldwell Banker provide that? Or is it getting an assistant? What have you found to help them start to break through this and actually produce what they should be producing, right? Like some agents, they could produce 20, 25 million if they had the right setup.
Yeah, I think our position with Coldwell Banker, I'll just speak to them. So Coldwell Banker Vanguard, of course, we have our own marketing department. So we do a lot of our in-house marketing. We have our own in-house photographers.
You just take that load off.
That takes a load. I don't have to go shop here, shop there, pick this person, do that, right? It's a one-stop shop. So that alone has been a tremendous benefit for any of our Coldwell Banker agents, right? So that is a huge tool for us in our bag. So the other thing is we do have transaction coordinators, right? And you can absolutely leverage transaction coordinators. We do have new agents that use transaction coordinators. I think you need to know the business and the process, right, first.
Yeah.
But we have them there, right? And you can learn from them, right? We have Rental Gurus, which is our property management division, right? We have a commercial division now, and we've expanded into the Central Florida region. So as a company, we're doing quite well. It's finding those things that at our tool sets for us agents that make it a little easier for us to do our business with, right? Me, myself, and I, as I say it, said, me, myself, and I can probably work circles around a lot of people, right? But I have my limits. So for me, that number is more about a 10 million number. And when I start to get around the 10 million, each year, I can start to feel it, right? So, but having been in program management, project management for years, I've had projects that I had 40 projects one time I used to manage. I personally do not use a transaction coordinator. That's a personal decision that I do. And even though I'm a manager and I'm still an active selling manager, active selling agent, actually, I still manage my own stuff. I'm hands-on. I go to home inspections. I go meet the appraiser there wherever I can, right? If I can't, I send someone, right? But for the most part, I'm there. I'm still in contact with my customer, right? And even having a team and stuff, I'm still the face of what happens, right? So I'm probably a little different from an agent perspective. I'm probably a little different than most, but I am totally hands-on with a lot of stuff. So, but everybody has their threshold on what they feel they can handle. If you have a part-time situation and you're a part-time realtor, then obviously, if you're doing $5 or $6 million a year, you're
part-time. That's pretty good.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
Right? So you probably need to have a transaction coordinator for that.
And
right?
consider going full-time.
You should probably consider going full-time. Full-time, or bringing on a team member. Honestly. So, I've had team members too, and I said, look, if you ever get to making $5 or $6 million, you want to go off your own. I'm not upset with that. I wouldn't be upset with that. I actually would take that as a compliment.
Yep.
Right. So, because I've helped and mentored you for you to build your business up to that point, you feel comfortable with to do that on your own. Perfectly. That's great.
That's the life of being a real estate agent.
On my own back and say, I just helped someone get to that point, right? So, but just from a transaction coordinating business, I think there is a threshold. You just gotta find out what your capacity is.
Well, I think again, it goes back to, I think one thing about talking to a lot of the top agents, they're giving. And if you're listening to this, I know I've said this, if you've listened to any of my episodes, I say this often, you've got to reach out to the top agents and sit down. You might be going along hunky-dory, but for the collaboration part of it, but there's always some nugget that you can pull off. And then if you are reaching this, because this, basically what you explained, there's many different ways to skin the breaking through the lid cat. So, what is it for you? You like doing the transaction coordinating, but you love using your marketing department. That's what I just heard out of you. Others, may need that. Like you said, sometimes you can't make that appraiser. So you got to send an assistant, or if you've got a team of sub agents that they're going out there because you're covering them when they're out of town or whatever. Type of thing. There's so many different ways to do it, and then obviously finding that brokerage that either offers that sort of thing to fill in the gaps if that's what you need. And the only way you're going to find out, because everyone does it differently, is to sit down with some of the top people and learn the different ways. Because of 215 episodes now, all the different ways everyone tells me they do real estate, and then talking to agents that I know are growing in the business, you need to sit down with 2 or 3 of these people
Mm-hmm.
and find out 2 or 3, because they're doing it 2 or 3 different ways.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's probably, I don't know, infinitely amount of ways to do it.
And I do, and I love sitting down with the other agents and saying, "Let's go through this together, right?"
Yeah.
Because honestly, I still grab those little nuggets too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm certainly, again, I get back if you're not learning, you know,
Yeah, you're dying.
pictures on the vine, right? So,
Yeah,
you're down the vine
yeah.
essentially. But yeah,
Yeah.
but no, great information.
Yeah. Ed, I appreciate you coming on today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Anything you'd like to add? Say there?
No, I just got to say, again, transition business, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is transactional, but you're helping people make transition this business, right? Think about that and what their side looks like, and then how can you help them out, right?
Yeah.
And you're successful in that, they're going to remember who you are, right?
Yeah.
And just stay in contact with them, right? Because usually the last person the person the realtor is going to use is the last one that probably made contact with them, more than likely, right?
100%.
And if you have a customer that you sold a home to or sold their home, stay in contact with them, because